good at like being a radio announcer type guy and introducing people and
I've
things
never
like
really done a podcast, so I'm on for the ride.
Today with me is David Payne. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Awesome.
I was just listening. Yeah. Hello. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Enraptured in that intro. Okay, so first thing I want to know is, when did you kind of get into Shmups?
Well, I got into Shmups, maybe, I kind of want to say 15 years ago. I started to collect arcade machines. But when I was a kid, when I was 12, I played Life Force. I was into them since back then.
Nice. What'd you play Life Force on?
Just on the Nintendo.
That is a great game. And that's the one where it'll flip from vertical to horizontal, right? Between stages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then you get the power-ups. It's like Gradius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, what other games? You said you mentioned other arcade games. What other arcade games were you excited about when you were younger?
Well, Life Force stuck with me, but I also played Contra a lot. I just had a Nintendo when I was a kid, and then what did I play on the Nintendo? I played Life Force, I played Contra, Double Dragon was amazing. There's just some masterpieces on that machine. After collecting the arcade stuff, I got a new appreciation for, like, they'd release something on the arcade and then they'd really refine it a lot for the home system, because they'd have more time to work on it. And they were, just some of those games were tailored so wonderfully.
Absolutely. You know what's funny is, I'll admit this, I'm a little too young to have grown up with the Nintendo. I grew up with the Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
And the first game I ever played was Super Mario World.
Uh-huh.
And
mine was Mario.
Yeah. Oh, the
Mario,
original.
Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, the original.
Mario. I'm 43, so I was like just a teenager when that stuff was coming out.
Well,
I bought my first Nintendo when I was 12, I guess, 12 or 13.
So you mentioned you grew up in Salt Lake, is that right?
Uh-huh.
So what was the arcade scene like in Salt Lake City? Was it pretty good?
Well, yeah, when I was a kid, there was an arcade game just everywhere. Every 7-Eleven had a couple arcade games. Every grocery store had a couple arcade games. You know, like a little arcade section by the doors.
Right, yeah.
I consider it, there's Golden Age arcade games, which is like all the...
Like the old school?
Ones,
Well, like Life Force?
Classic ones.
Like Life Force and things like that?
Before Life Force.
Oh, like Pac-Man.
And stuff like that.
Space Invaders kind of stuff?
Yeah, Space Invaders and Pac-Man. And then there's another era, and the people that played those are just a little bit older than me. And when I was a teenager, it was Life Force and Ninja Gaiden, the arcade one.
Oh, yeah, that is a great game.
Altered Beast and all those great Sega games, Golden Axe and stuff. Those things really shocked me. And Strider. So they were in the arcade right when I was a kid, and I consider that to be... There's a gap after Pac-Man. I mean, I'm kind of abbreviating, but after Pac-Man and before race car games, you know, that whole section right there is when I was going to the arcade all the time.
Growing up, home console-wise, what were your home consoles of choice?
Well, I got hooked. So I saw Strider at the arcade in the mall, and that was the one that really hooked me. I bought a Nintendo, and I got a GamePro video game magazine one time, like on a family vacation. It was sitting there on the rack, and there was pictures of Strider coming out for the Nintendo, and that really kind of galvanized my love for Nintendo in the first place. And it was coming out the next year or something. I saved up. I was just a little kid, and I got that. And then I kind of think you need one like super goal, some game that you're like crazy passionate about. For some reason, happened to be Strider for me.
Oh yeah, like to
lock you
to get the one credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of like Ninja Gaiden and Strider, those kinds of games, even though they're not shmups, they still kind of are reminiscent of it, where they're brutally difficult. You definitely have to have some technical skills to get through them. One death or one mistake and you're dead as a doornail.
Yeah, they're similar. I mean, they have the same. Shmups are kind of fringe now, you know.
Yeah,
they're comparable to that stuff. I mean, they're the same kind of pace and the same thing as all those arcade games from 1990, basically. You know, I had a huge Shmups explosion when I discovered MAME too, because there was a certain point where I learned that technology,
Oh, yeah.
That's when I played Dodonpachi and stuff like that. And downloaded all these games that, I couldn't see in the arcade ever. And kind of got some mass exposure. That kind of tied in my love. That's when I realized that I like Life Force so much. And I discovered that stuff. And I was like, I like these kind of things. This is the best. This is like a, really solid kind of game.
That's awesome.
MAME. Yeah, totally.
And speaking of MAME, you also mentioned that, maybe not on air, that you had, at one point, I don't know if you still do, a pretty expansive PCB collection.
Yes. I'd never really collected anything in my life, really.
Uh-huh.
But the attitude that you have when you collect it's a very powerful attitude, because it's like all this identity that you don't really have to exercise all the time, but it's just always there. Because all those games that I would get, they're so rare. They're so rare. Like you'd see.
Oh, I know.
In a span of 5 years, you might see one. You know what I mean? Or maybe 10 years. So this kind of like constant searching for a specific thing is a really meaningful kind of hobby,
Absolutely. And in case everyone's wondering, I'm going to post a link. You have on your webpage screenshots of the various PCBs you owned.
Yeah.
And I was looking through them and I noticed, you had Deju in there. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You had Dodonpachi. Oh, really?
Yeah, it is.
What a game. What a game.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. It's a masterpiece. I'm also into I call it Daiyao.
I don't know how to say it, so you might have it much more correct than I do.
I think everybody gets to say it their own way.
So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned, Life Force was where you kind of started with Shmups, and you mentioned your appreciation of Deju. So I was wondering, as far as Shmups go, what is kind of the, I guess, subgenre or style of shmup that you prefer the most? Or do you not really?
I don't think I have one. I think there's elements of shmups that I am into more than other stuff. And these elements are like, if there's like a sense of kind of narrative or drama, visually, like visual narrative.
Yeah.
Like, did you ever play Shien Ryu?
I'm drawing a blank there.
It's like it was on the Saturn, but it was also on this arcade machine. Let's see, what was another one? Do you know one called Daio?
Who's the developer? I might recognize the developers.
It's in the room with me, so I want to see who made it. But, every nerd kind of has their own focus,
Yeah, you're exactly right there.
Okay, it's loading up on my machine. It's made by... I'm embarrassed I don't know who made it, because it's so complicated. This is made by... I'm just looking at the cartridge. It's made by Warishi. I have no idea what else they made.
I don't either.
They made that one, and they made Dio, which is another arcade game.
I'm definitely have to check that out now.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it doesn't. In the past, it hasn't worked very good on MAME. So.
Did you ever own the PCB?
Yeah, it's on the same. So there's this arcade machine called the Sega Titan Video, which is like I guess it's closest to like a Sega Saturn for the arcade,
Yeah.
And it's a cartridge system, so you switch out the cartridges.
Oh, that's sick.
And Radiant Silvergun is on there. And there's one called Guardian Force, where you drive this tank, and it's on there too. Oh, it's called Terra Diver on the...
I've heard of Terra Diver.
That one's on there too.
Okay.
So there's all these kind of like sprite-based shmups, but they have a little bit of polygon sometimes. Tsukyu Gurentai is the one. It's still good. It's made by the same people that made Battle Garega.
I think that's Raising. Is that right? Or is that wrong? Okay. And when this podcast is posted, I'm going to just make it sound like I knew that. I'm not even going to question myself.
Me too. My credibility's taking a nosedive. I was looking at that list before, and I was trying to memorize the names of the games.
What happened with your PCBs? Did you sell them off, or did you still got them all?
I just sold them. So there was a point. So I collected these arcade machines, just generic cabinets from the garbage heaps of the. If you look in the newspaper for amusement devices,
yes,
those are the arcade places, So I'd get cabinets, and then I'd collect the circuit boards and put them in. And then it was after I made my first MAME cabinet that I was in the room, and I was kind of looking at one cabinet and then looking at the MAME cabinet. And I was watching the game over there and over there.
Uh-huh.
I was playing them. Now I'm actually more refined. Now I'm a little pickier about emulation and stuff. But back then I was like,
you're like, it's good, baby.
Exactly the same. Why am I collecting this circuit board? And the whole time, I never was into the hardware. I just wanted access to the games. Because the circuit boards just get old, they break, they're fragile.
Pain in the ass, probably.
I just wanted the game. And when I realized I could have the game, I was like, I'm getting rid of these circuit boards. So I sold them all.
So what year was it that you sold them? Or was it just slowly over time?
Well, it was 10 years ago. Because it coincided, I have 2 children that were born 10 years ago. It coincided with that.
I can understand that. Yep, when my son was born, I was selling all kinds of crap, so I understand that for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't really have to sell them, I don't think. But I mean, I had a credit card debt that over the previous 10 years, I'd amassed maybe $2,000 or something, because I was a real collector. I never spent more than $200,
That is
ever.
That's amazing.
And they're all more expensive now.
So Deju's my favorite shmup. I'm kind of a collector.
That one was $300, by the way. It was probably $250.
Really? That when you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other day, I was like, I've got a real job now. I'm gonna go a little crazy and, drop $300, $400 on a PCB or something. So I was looking around. Oh, I was a little naive at this point. I was looking around and I found Deju for $100. I was like, oh, of course. So then I'm going through the listing. I'm about to buy it. It's a holder. It's a stand for the PCB. It's not even the PCB. $100. I was like, oh, this is not good.
Nice. They're like art pieces. I mean, they're not even, I would never buy that stuff just to play it. I agree, it's too much money. But on the flip side, I have a new appreciation for arcade art that I've never had before. All of a sudden. So maybe I would actually buy any of that stuff just to have. But I used to just buy it to play, and it's too expensive. Well, like I said, it wasn't as expensive when I bought it.
So where were you?
That was one of my parameters.
So where were you picking up these PCBs?
Well, I bought them all from the Shmups forum trading section. I got tons of them there. That's where I sold most of them. eBay, maybe half of them on eBay. I would just search. I'd really browse eBay all the time. Yeah. And then very rarely it would just be like an interaction where I guess maybe if I found someone on Shmups forum, I'd interact with them, to get it with stranger danger. But, I guess now I'm thinking back, I guess it was mostly eBay.
Yeah. So do you have any stories of either great, a great find or a horrible deal gone wrong?
Well, not so much, except just the repeated story of waiting for the UPS guy, having to intercept him because he has this priceless object, is irreplaceable. And if I miss him, there is a very real chance that it'll disappear. So it's basically like Indiana Jones for cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
And I'd drive around and ask the UPS drivers if they were mine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's the other guy over there.
Yeah. Did you watch?
That was regular. Every single game. It didn't matter how much it cost, because the cost made me able to get it because I could afford small purchases. But that has nothing to do with the pricelessness of these pieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Did you watch a little Ace Ventura and you're like, oh shit, I gotta get down to the post office?
That's what it was like.
They're just doing hacky sack with my PCB.
Oh yeah, it was just pure hell. Just that experience. I mean, I'd kind of spend either half the day or a whole day or big sections of multiple days, kind of hanging around the living room. So to intercept the guy, it was just totally, totally intense, because you couldn't get it again.
Right, absolutely. Did you ever?
Now, and you can't have them. But I mean, on that list, you look at that list, that link I sent you, and it was it was a fine collection. I did that for so long that I ended up
beautiful collection.
Having so many of that radical list of stuff,
Yeah, an amazing collection.
But every one of these, these didn't just fall in my lap. They were all hunted, seeked, and found, just slowly.
So how did you make the list? Was it kind of,
Well,
just kind of opportunity?
Oh, yes.
Or is it like you had a list and you're going to get through it step by step?
Like that. It's just like, as I started collecting them, I got more into the culture and was just exposed to more of them. I mean, this list with these little screenshots, that was the exposure to them back then. You couldn't go on the internet and ask people about them or something, but it was mostly like all anyone knew was a screenshot, and they just knew that it existed.
You're doing this at a time that this stuff isn't as accessible as it is now.
Yeah. Nobody a lot of it, I bet a lot of these you couldn't play on MAME when I bought them.
And did you have any interest in the home console ports of them, or were you just like arcade all the way?
Oh, I did that too. I collected the home stuff too. But I was about the arcade. They're better in the arcade.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got a dedicated machine to the game.
And I had all these machines. I didn't always have a house big enough for the machines, so for years I put them around the town in the bars and stuff like that in Salt Lake City. So I kind of did that thing for a long time. I had a little arcade. There's an all-ages concert hall here in Salt Lake City called Kilbyport. It's like this, it's been there forever, for like 15 years, but it's like basically like a garage, but it's like this nationally known little underground concert place. And I had a little section outside there, a little shed that I had a real arcade in for a year or two,
Awesome. Like,
I don't know if I can even say those
access.
words. I had them there and people could go see them.
Oh.
Nobody gave a shit about it, of course. I mean, but I'd always put the coolest games in there, just wondering if someone would, it seemed like that was pre-internet, so I couldn't even tell everybody, you're looking for this game. If you want to go on a pilgrimage and see this game, then maybe you can go here. I wasn't even that advanced back then,
Well, also for the listeners out there, I'd just like to clarify, we live in the mountain area of the United States where no one in our area gives a shit about this kind of stuff at all.
In this region, I know I've been lucky enough to just meet a couple people who have the same kind of passion, the same hobby. Just a couple. And they live very, very far away. They live an hour away. One lives an hour away one direction, one lives an hour away the other direction.
So another thing I was curious about, because you mentioned you were married and you had your son, or I don't know if you had other children. I had
2 daughters.
2 daughters. Sorry. I mentioned my son, so I know that. But anyway, when I started kind of getting into collecting this kind of stuff and I started bringing home CRTs and Trinitrons, my wife wanted to kill me. Did you have any experiences similar to that?
No, I had support.
That's awesome.
I had support as long as I used my own credit card, and I don't know, it was okay. Well, I had like 7 or 8 or 9 arcade machines, in the zone here. So
that's awesome. Yeah. So as of right now, you've got 7 or 8 plugged in, ready to roll.
Yeah. Well, right now there's 3 in this room, and then in the other room there's about 8 or 9. I actually can't remember. But but I've had support. She did tell me that she would never help me carry an arcade game one time.
You're on your own, buddy. You and the dolly. That's awesome, though, that you have those cabinets. How old are your children? Are they old enough to kind of, play the cabinets and like them? Do they care much for them?
They're 10, and they don't think they're cool. But I'm not surprised because, I've never met another person who wanted to repeatedly play Shmups,
Very true.
Almost, so it's like, I'm not really shocked. I've kind of faced it that you either engage it or you don't feel like it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those, it can be frustrating at times because, if you're into it, it is such a rewarding experience and it's, you're passionate about it. But if someone's not into it, I'm at a loss of how to get them excited about it. I don't know what the magic trigger is for people to suddenly get interested in them,
Well, I think they're so fun. I can't imagine why anyone wouldn't feel the same as me,
I think one thing that turns off a lot of my friends is just, we have to say, the difficulty is just, you're getting your ass beat and you're going to have to take it in a lot of these games.
I gotta say, you play them even, I'm passionate about this stuff. I'm crazy about it. But I engage it very differently even than you do. Like, tried to once, by the same kind of example, I never really got into fighting games. I got into fighting games after Shmups, and I've never really tried on them. And I've never even really tried on Shmups. I just kind of do my best. I've never really, practiced. I guess I have tried to get some high scores, but I mean, I've only taken a very organic practice approach where I just try my hardest over and over.
As opposed to the one I went over in my podcast where, I'm training you for boot camp to get through the game.
Yeah,
The different thing is I feel like Shmups, it's different than playing a fighting game casually because there's so much more to them as far as, the art, the design, and you can appreciate them.
It's different. Fighting games start and stop quite a bit more than Shmups do.
Yeah, very true. That is right. I've never really thought about that, but yeah, fighting games, and it's funny, the better you are at being patient and waiting around, the better you usually end up being in a fighting game, because that's kind of the default strategy of most fighting games.
Yeah.
But in Shmups, it's reversed. Patient and waiting around is going to get you murdered. You gotta get out there and get aggressive.
Yeah, there's a little bit of something else too. Shmups, like you're losing at the Shmup is like an inevitability you're just going to meet. Fighting games, you're actually really trying to succeed a little more than Shmups. Because it feels a little bad to get beaten in a fighting game. And if you blow open a Shmup, you're just like, oh.
Well, it is what it is. Yeah.
You feel a little bit bad. Not as bad as fighting games for me. I do have a favorite fighting game.
What's that?
Well, I'm into this one called the Rumblefish. Do you ever play that one?
I haven't.
It's another arcade one. There's a machine called the Atomus Wave, and it's this fighting game that's on the Atomus Wave, and it's just...
Wow, I've never heard of it. You think I would. Do you know who developed it?
It was Gimps. I think a company called Gimps. So Sammy makes the Atomus Wave. Atomus Wave is there's another one called the Naomi. Do you know that one?
This Naomi board by Sega?
Yeah, the arcade board.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the Dreamcast,
Yes.
I don't really know the details, but the Atomus Wave is kind of leftovers from Neo Geo, leftovers from Naomi.
Oh, okay.
Leftovers from Sega and Neo Geo stuff.
SNK?
Yeah, SNK. And they made this board called the Atomus Wave that's kind of like a Naomi. It's like a cross between a Naomi and a Neo Geo. But it's a game on there. There's a bunch of other games on there called Metal Slug 6 is on that board.
Do you have one of those?
I have one, and it takes these little cartridges. It's like another cartridge-based board, arcade board.
That's funny. You seem to have a very in-depth knowledge of, these different boards and stuff like that. Do you have a particular that's your favorite?
Well, you asked me before, what my favorite console was,
Yes.
And I'm very into, the different... I think that as an artist, I'm into the medium, that is being used. And, a Nintendo game always kind of looks like a Nintendo game, and I think it goes much beyond. It's kind of designed like a Nintendo game. Mm-hmm. Kind of has these sensibilities that kind of go with that medium,
Sure.
And I kind of view every console as being a very different medium. So my favorites are probably the TurboGrafx and the Neo Geo, and I don't know, maybe those two. They don't have my favorite games or anything, but just they're two systems that are a little bit not way overpowered or anything in any area except for the visuals. They're have overpowered visuals.
I remember that.
Since that's the case, since the computer's kind of wimpy, they really put all their money into the visuals, and that's what I like about these games in the first place, the visuals. So
yeah, and I know on the Neo Geo you're getting some of the best sprite art you'll ever see.
Yeah. Mostly just all the resources are focused into the art rather than other stuff. I mean, you could play some really crappy game on the Neo Geo, but the art is really beautiful. TurboGrafx is the same, I think.
I noticed one of the games you had in your, collection was Blazing Star. I think that game has amazing sprite art.
Yeah, it's the focus of the game. Totally. And I don't think games can be crappy and have good art and be good, but if it's balanced a little bit towards the art, I always like that.
And I think cave games are like that as well. They have beautiful sprite art.
Definitely art prioritized, But not always. Did you play Mushihime-sama?
Yes.
That one's not as good as Doronpachi Daiju. The art's gorgeous. And the music and everything. Everything about it is gorgeous, but it's less narrative, It's less it's a little more gameplay oriented and a little less narrative oriented, I feel.
Yeah, I could see that.
You know, there's levels where the background kind of stays the same throughout the whole level, you know. And you kind of
you're just going through trees and bushes.
Yeah, you kind of feel like you're on a treadmill instead of on an adventure, you know. That game kind of accesses a part of my mind that is opposed to intellect. Like, I can't think as fast as the bullets are going, but I happen to be kind of going around them sometimes, but I'm like, you know, my body's doing it, not my mind. That's kind of what I feel like. And they do it by doing it so steadily for so long that you kind of turn that part off, you know?
Yeah.
That's how I feel when I play it.
So, when you play these days, I'm assuming you're playing on your cabinets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're playing with, do you have the monitors and the whole 9 yards?
Well, I have, so since you collect monitors, but you don't collect arcade monitors, right?
Not yet, I can't find any, but I'll get one.
They're like, it's because they're like gold. They're so rare.
Yeah.
They're just like, they're priceless objects now. So I have a bunch of cabinets, and then kind of how my cabinets are designed has to do with how many monitors I have, you know. So I have some cabinets with like 25-inch CRTs. Then I have other cabinets with, you know, flat screens and stuff. I try to be as innovative as I can with the display. I have some that are, you know, TVs and flat screens and stuff like that, you know, modern TVs with, I don't know how to say the word. I call it a Fresnel lens. But I kind of think it's French, like a Fresnel lens or something. But it's a flat piece of plexiglass with, you know, kind of a spiral cut into it like a record. Okay. And the angle of that turns it into a magnifying glass. So it's a flat magnifying glass, basically. Oh, wow. And I'll have a giant one of those on the front. So this flat screen will have this really organic kind of projected quality because it's all a little bit warpy from the. Oh, okay. Glass, it'll kind of round it out like a CRT. Yeah. And I have a couple of those. And I have a couple of, you know, normal size, old style little arcade CRTs. And I care very, so I call my arcade cabinets, I call them sculptures. They're sculptures. Like, they're not, utilities. Like, every one of them is a shitty old cabinet from the garbage, heavily rebuilt, just like, you know, heavily modified with, like, you know, all buttons in all different spots than original. One attitude with arcade stuff is kind of this, yearning to get the original piece of art together. So, like, you make they call it a dedicated cabinet, where the cabinet has the original art on it and you know, the original presentation with the game in it, and you don't mess with it after that. Since I just had generic cabinets and just collected the circuit boards, I kind of got drawn into an opposite approach where every cabinet first was a generic box to play it in, but now I view it as like a very sculptural, like one-of-a-kind object that, like, I don't know, I feel like if some bug makes a cocoon that just fits its body, you know? Like, that's how all my cabinets are for me. Like, I just, you know, do this, throw in ridiculous things that are just kind of fit my taste. If a bunch of people came over, if arcade aficionados came and saw my cabinets, they think it was blasphemy that I ruined all these cabinets. They'd repossess them by force. Yeah. You'd be called in court to answer for your crimes. Yeah. And if just strangers came and played them, they'd probably think like, well, these are pretty weird cabinets, but I mean, they're perfect for me. Like, I designed them just how I wanted them. Do you have your own artwork for them? Well, they're collage. I mean, I have one. I used to make a lot of art because I used to play in this rock and roll band, you know, over the decades. And I'd like do a lot of art, like, you know, one cabinet, like the marquee, instead of saying Raiden 2 or something, will say like, buy our CDs or something, or like have a band name on it or something. Nice. And there's a lot of hand painted aspects to the art, you know. That's awesome. They're just all hodgepodge, and I'll throw, like, if I can find an extra cool marquee or something, I'll stick it on another cabinet just because it looks cool, you know. That's awesome that you have, so when you said you rebuilt these, did you do the woodwork and stuff as well, or how did that go? No, but you have to rebuild the control panels a lot, and I buy them from the garbage too, so, like, a lot of them have rotten parts that I have to replace, you know, things like that. I just noticed my voice is getting louder and louder. This is what nerds do when they're passionate about when they're hitting their hitting their exact thing. They start to go crazy and talk louder and louder. I I have a joke that says, how can you tell if someone's a nerd? And then the answer is, 1, are they talking louder and louder and won't stop? And the 2 is like, are their eyes kind of like glazing over at the same time?
I know, it's funny.
That's so funny, yes. Well, I'm passionate about arcade cabinets. I'm kind of getting into it.
So how long have you had your cabinets? You mentioned 10 years ago you started collecting. Did you have the cabinets then, or was it even before then?
10 years ago, my children were born and I sold all the boards.
Oh, that's right.
10 years before that,
My mistake.
Collecting this stuff. Like 1994.
Wow.
But it was 1994. I must admit.
Because I'm thinking about it, if you're collecting in 1994, some of these games aren't even released. Like, Deju isn't even out.
Oh, yeah. I remember the time period from when something came out. I remember, like, just clearly thinking, I can't pay $1,000 for that. Well, I know it's going to get down to $300. I just have to wait 7 years. I remember thinking that all the time.
That is the mind of a collector right there.
Yeah. Totally.
That's awesome, though. And so when you were selling,
that one came out, you could have it if you had $1,000. I think Dodam Fetchy Daoji, you could have it be like it was $1,000. Maybe it was $2,000. I don't know. That stuff was just like, I'd see stuff, being sold new.
Yeah.
For the arcade. It was always like, some crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Price.
And then you fire the game up and Cave's telling you they're gonna sue you to the full extent of the jam for playing it in the USA.
Yep. And I'm in the arcade industry now too, is the other thing. So now I know that it's still kind of the same. Like new games are like, $10,000 or something instead of $200. So all the prices are just so high. And arcades are kaput anyway.
Yeah.
There is an arcade here in Salt Lake that's kind of this very famous arcade. And nobody knows, only people like you and me would recognize that it's famous. No, it's just this, it's not. It's called Game Grid Arcade. Uh-huh. And it's on the far other side of town for me, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's even hard to drive over there. But they have a couple, they have Darius Burst.
Yes.
CS, is that what it's called?
Is that the one with like the three monitors?
No, well it's the new one that has two giant monitors.
2 giant ones, okay.
It's kind of, you could almost call it like the last, I'm talking out my ass now, but it's like, I consider it to be like the last corporate shmup, kind of.
Right, as in made by someone other than an indie developer kind of thing?
Yeah, with like corporate roots. It's made by Taito, I think there was lots of them in Japan. It was so successful in Japan as shmup, I guess shmups are popular in Japan, but it was so successful that they wanted to localize it for the US. So they just made this one cabinet and they sent it over here and they tried it in some arcade, probably in Chicago or something. I actually don't even know. And it was a total failure. They tried it over here in this place because it's a famous arcade. The guy who runs it, he runs this industry blog called ArcadeHeroes.com, which I think is like one of the last arcade industry blogs.
Wow.
He ended up being in charge of it. So anyways, that's how he gets in touch with these, that's how he gets himself in these situations. But then they took it to his arcade where it was, of course, a total failure,
Oh, no.
Did not want to make another one after that,
Well, I was hoping the story would end that they brought it to the arcade and you went and played it so much that they decided, you know what, we need to bring more of these machines over.
No, it was an absolute, business failure, but offered him they offered for him to buy it. They said we don't want this back. It's in English, what are we going to do with it? So you can buy it if you want. And he has it. But he has a couple one-off games there. It's actually not, I'm exaggerating. They made 2 of them. Mm-hmm. But he has one of them. And I don't know where the other one is. And then he has another one that was he has this game that's kind of like a Dragon's Lair. Do you know Leisure Suit Larry?
Yes.
It's a cross between Dragon's Lair and Leisure Suit Larry. You play a guy who's trying to get the attention of this lady in cartoons, in Don Bluth style animation. And I know they only made a couple of those. He has one of those.
And that's a shmup?
It's not a shmup.
Oh, okay.
It's like Dragon's Lair. It's like a cartoon.
Okay.
And then, there's a shmup called Sky Cursor. Do you know that one?
Is that the newer one that was released that kind of looks like Metal Slug? Like it has that that style of pixel art?
Yeah, and that's like a level 10 indie shmup.
Yeah.
Like indie arcade shmup, which is the rarest thing in the world.
Right, because it comes with like a PCB, right? It's not just...
Yeah, I think there's only a couple people as far as I know, a couple of people in the world that are like, you know, making arcade hardware for people to have like that. And it's these couple people that live, I don't know where they're from, across the country, but they made Sky Cursor and they also made this little computer for it to run on. There's another one called the X Arcadia, I think. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
There's another one. I think it's one guy. I'm really talking out my ass, but I think it's one guy in Japan who has done that with his, and he's trying to get some indie shmups on there. He's trying to get, is it called AKA to Blue? AKA to Blue? I can't remember. AKA to Blue, this famous indie shmup made by ex-cave people.
Are they putting that on a PCB?
Yeah, it's on a PCB. I don't think PCB is the right word.
Right, it's on a little Linux computer.
Yes, just some kind of little boutique computer, you know.
Do you have any interest in kind of the newer releases? You know, things like Danmaku Limited 3, any of the newer shmups, or?
Yeah. That's gonna be on there too, I think. Is that true?
I have no idea. We're gonna have to interview the guy who made that game, have him on the podcast and confirm whether or not.
Oh, I would love to. I follow that guy on Instagram. But because I like that game. And it's such a, I mean, you know, you're doing a podcast about this. I've always collected this stuff. I don't have anyone to share this culture with, you know. Mm-hmm. I think it's so interesting that there is kind of like this cultural element to something that's so widespread. I've never been part of something that just had a few people spread around the globe that want to tune into it. I can't think, I mean, like people that like a certain rock and roll band or something, that's not even like that. It's like, it's an extreme version of that, you know?
As far, like, with speedrunning, you know, 5 years ago, I actually knew a little bit about it. And I fancied myself like a super good Super Metroid speedrunner. And then I realized, no, I'm not. I'm pretty good, but compared to these days, absolutely not. And so...
yes, go on.
My hopes, honestly, is that maybe Shmups can have a similar experience where, you know, out of nowhere, there's just this huge spike in interest and people start, you know, taking the genre more seriously. We get more developers interested into it, seeing it as a more financially successful venture, you know.
Yeah. Because I speedrun Strider and Castlevania. The two that I do. But not like, I mean, by speed, I just, you know, play them as fast as I can. I don't, you know, practice.
Right. Yeah, like, it's like Shmups where there's those speedrunners who they're breaking down the frames, they're breaking down all the hidden mechanics. I know what you're saying though, because I'm very casual with my speedrunning too. It's like, basically I'm gonna try to just play the game as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I am a casual speedrunner.
Right.
With some games. But anyways, about cultural focal points, like you're describing, I have one. I have a vision for that too, which is this kind. I have a feeling. I have like a view on the whole thing that I don't think shmups are getting less popular or anything. I think more and more people are knowing about them all the time.
I think you're right. I would agree with that.
And they're blowing up and they're getting more and more accessible and more people know about them. I mean, just because like 10 years ago, only I did. But now anyone who knows me also does, you know?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, 10 years ago, I think I'm a good example of this. Just in the past 5 years is when I kind of got interested in playing shmups more seriously. And before then, I knew about them, but I was like, whatever. So.
Well, anyways, I think that, they're getting, you know, more people are learning about them, but there is like, kind of certain bottom of the barrel. I think the best stuff in life happens at the bottom of the barrel, where like you hit rock bottom, and then the ladder you used to climb out is like a permission ladder. Like once you bottomed out, you're like, well, I guess I could just do anything. And these are all things you never thought of doing. You know? And it has to do with the arcades have the medium for all this stuff is arcade. Kind of, it's arcade and home consoles that are gone. You know, and that's the bottom. That's rock bottom, I think. And I think that it's that kind of perception that has led those people to start making those arcade hardwares. I think that attitude that led to Danmaku 3 or whatever it's called, you know?
Yeah.
like that some people are kind of like going out on a limb and like focusing their art into stuff that doesn't exist anymore because they feel like they have permission to do it now. It's rock bottom. And I think there's going to be an artistic revival. That's kind of what I think.
And do you think that is just with shmups, or do you think with arcades as well?
I think with arcades, but I think shmups are included. Well, it actually has nothing to do with shmups. It has to do with just this attitude that anything goes. Because, I mean, if you wanted to do something for the arcade, if those people who made Sky Cursor, if they wanted to engage the arcade, that's the last kind of game they would ever make. They would just straight up go make a dance game or a race car game. Like, that's what they were doing.
Right.
But since the irrelevance level has, like, you know, peaked out so much, they kind of, like, have permission to do what they want instead of doing for business.
Because it's not a guarantee that if you throw out some race car game, you're going to make money. Not like the
possibility of making money on a race car game, there's the guarantee that they will not make any money on a shmup, and then that gives you permission to go ahead and make your shmup because you're not doing it for the money anymore. You're doing it for artistic reasons. You know? And that opens up a lot of doors.
And so one thing I wanted to ask you about, too, is you mentioned to me before talking that you had a little experience with kind of developing your own shmup. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, first, can you tell me about your Game Maker experience?
Sure. Absolutely. So
that would contextualize it, because I got to drop this major bomb. So tell me about the Game Maker.
Okay. So I have a little bit of experience with programming as well. It actually started prior to my interest in shmups. I was going to build... I've always been interested in programming video games for a long time. And I've had all these ideas, but poor knowledge of a lot of coding and things like that. And a few years ago, I just finally was like, you know what? I'm going to learn some coding, and I'm going to learn how to program some stuff. And so I ended up working on quite a few kind of games, styles of games that... like some basic fighting games, some basic platformer games, and things like that.
Whoa.
But for one, I have to say, fighting games are a pain in the ass. They are super hard to program. So
it sounds like there'd be a lot of...
Oh my gosh. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so I got through actually quite a bit of it, but then I was like, how long? I mean, this is going to take years. And the stupid thing about fighting games is a lot of people won't just pick up a fighting game and play it. Like, it's got to have a bit of a reputation. So I was like, I just got really discouraged. So I started getting into shmups, and I was like, you know what? Programming shmups, you know, that might be more rewarding, a little easier. In some ways, it is easier. In some ways, it's not. But I actually do have a alpha build of a shmup I've put together. That's, it's honestly like a fusion of 3 shmups, like the code from 3 shmups. I was like, okay, I've worked on 3. Let's just put them together into one. And the challenge for me hasn't actually been the coding. I felt like I've gotten a really good knack for it. The challenge for me has always been the art, because I am not an artist. And so I've had to cobble together sprites from all kinds of different sources, like cut them out of traditional paintings or art books and things like that, scan them in and do some editing there. I think it turned out pretty cool, but I do spend a lot of time on, more than I'd like, on doing stuff like that. So at this point, I'm kind of putting the brakes on it while I'm working on this podcast, but I work on it still every now and again, try to improve it. It's basically kind of a clone of a cave-style game, but I've added a few things that I think are cool, like a sword mechanic, like from Radiant Silvergun, right? You get the sword and stuff like that. I'll throw up a video of it, and maybe a build everyone can play.
Link to it. I want to see what it's like too.
Yeah, I'll throw up a video of it.
And where did you get all the art, basically? Like, it's kind of collaged from...
It's collaged from, like, art books of, like, traditional paintings, and because I have a lot of artists in my wife's side of the family. And they have all this talent that they're not willing to draw sprite art for me. And they leave poor me to try and figure it out. But yeah, so I'm pretty good at, like, digitally editing stuff, but not good at just drawing. So I found these old traditional paintings.
You fly a spaceship?
It's like I don't know what he is. He's like a samurai shepherd type guy.
And it's made in Game Maker.
Yeah, I used Game Maker.
Well, I'm almost scared to get into it, but I got it to describe where I'm coming from on mine. These are I got to give you the background, because this is like, I perceive all this stuff as being so cutting edge that it's almost science fiction in real. It's like a retro science fiction movie. It's like a science fiction movie about an alternate universe in the past. It's that crazy. But here's the details. I've just wanted to make a game since I was 12, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like lots of people.
Yep.
It's 2018. I'm 43, so I've been alive for a long time, you know. I'm not even able to imagine a future of 2018, you know. It's like such a big number. And we should be in flying cars now and stuff like that, you know.
I know, Back to the Future.
Teleporting around. But one thing that doesn't exist, as far as I know, is a program that a layperson can use to make an interactive puppet show. Basically a video game, you know? And maybe that's an exaggeration. There probably is stuff like that. There's stuff like that on my kids' iPads.
Right.
There's nothing like that would make a game like you're trying to make on Game Maker. Just my whole life I've been researching that. I've been searching and looking for something that would unlock that medium, you know, just making a video game. And it turns out I discovered this a year ago, but 9 years before that, there's a couple that live in England named John and Karen, and they made video games for like a bunch of British companies, just as labor force, you know?
Yeah.
And they decided, and I mean, I'm telling this like I know by heart, but I just barely know these people, but I read this on their website. But it says, the guy says, his name's John, he said he was talking to his friend, and his 12-year-old was showing him some pictures from his video game he was imagining, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
How 12-year-olds do. And then he was like, ding ding, I'm a programmer. Maybe I could do that. Maybe this is down my alley, you know? Maybe I should make a game so 12-year-olds can realize so they can move their art around on screen. And then that was 10 years ago. And they quit their jobs slowly over the next decade, and they've been focusing on this program. And the status of this program is that, I don't know if I'm exaggerating plus or minus, but I'd say it's like 70% done.
Oh, they're still in development then.
Yeah, far in development. So it's like, 70, I mean, many of the things on it don't work, even though they're there. It's just in an extreme beta, you know? And this program that they've been working on slowly for 10 years is called Shoot 'em Up Kit. And it's on Steam. And I think that anybody who tried to interface with this program would just kind of be shocked that something works, totally discouraged that anything doesn't work. And if they went through it as much as I have, they'd just be amazed that it exists without working all the way and also working quite a bit. You know what I mean? And in programming, that's crazy. Everything has to work or else it's a dud. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it's not done. But they're trying to get it done, and it's released. It's available to the public. It costs $30 or $40. Anyways, a year ago, I went out on a limb, and I was like, I'm just going to buy this program, and I got I'll waste $40 on this program, basically. I'll throw $40 in the toilet. So I bought the program. I started working on it. I kind of started to grit my teeth a little bit more and more, thinking, I got to be able to figure this out. There's got to be a way that I can make this work. It's also, for me, really hard to use, but you practice Doronpachi Daiju and get through parts, that speaks to your personality as a programmer too. I couldn't learn nor spell a single line of programming to save my life. I'd walk away, because I don't have the personality to do it. So I tried that a little bit too. Just a tiny, tiny bit. But I took all that same tenacity and that same ridiculous focus and put it into this half-done program. And I made this arcade game that is just a complete finished arcade game as a program, but that's the smallest facet of it. It's also in a cabinet, and you play it, and you put in a quarter and you play it. That's all. And I'm building my second copy now to try to sell to the barcade in town. That's it.
Mike, I have a few questions about it, just because Okay, my game is super alpha, and there's one stage that doesn't even have a boss. It's like you fight all the enemies, get to the end of the stage, it's like, good job. So, does yours have complete stages, with boss fights and everything like that?
It's 5 long levels with bosses. Some of them have multiple bosses in them, and there's kind of 5 big sections, but a couple of them are split into 2 smaller sections. It's full. It's like a full. It's probably as long as. Let's see, how long is Doronpechi Daiju? It's probably like
5 stages.
Like 70% as big as Doronpechi Daiju. Like it takes 25 minutes to play through.
Wow.
25 minutes of intense blasting.
I think I saw a clip of it. It's a vertical, right?
It's horizontal.
Oh, horizontal. Of course, I meant to say that. Sorry. I actually meant to say horizontal. Because it has the Salt Lake City skyline in the background, right?
Yeah, okay, well, all that monologue I just gave, that stuff, I tried to say it as slow and with as much gravity as I could. Because that's,
you were pulling me in with the gravity.
I can't even say it out loud without being shocked. Not shocked that I was able to make this game, or shocked that it turned out a certain way, or anything, but shocked that was the only way I could do it. That it's an absolutely unlocked medium. And with my game, I've kind of unlocked it a tiny bit, because I think I'm the first person who's done it with them.
Right.
And as far as I know, they're the first person who has done what they're doing. And this is like in a world of 1 billion people with, I don't know, did I say 1 billion? It's
I'm
like,
sure.
You know what I'm saying. I'm shocked that, and by the same token, there's only one Photoshop, but that's actually not true, because there's some Photoshop copies. It's like, if you want to do Photoshop, you might maybe have a choice of a handful of programs.
Oh, yeah.
Why isn't there 100 Photoshops? You know what I mean? And by the same token, I was able to pull this off with a 70% done video game, and it's why isn't there 100 of those? I mean, when they invented video games, how come they didn't start inventing programs like this?
So I wanted to ask you, what are kind of the mechanics of it? As far as, is it kind of like a old school type shooter, or do you have beams and power ups? How does that work?
Well, I'll leave the background, but I can't even stress enough the experience of this game, and just the fact that it exists, I'm perceiving as the most cutting edge thing in the whole universe. Just like those guys who made Sky Cursor, that's actually pretty cutting edge too, I think, for them to do. They're the only ones who've done it too. Okay, so anyway, I'm totally nerding out on that because I'm shocked. But anyways, to the game, the interesting details about the game, I gotta tell you that after I tell you these other details.
Okay.
They're so crazy. One detail is, it is made 100% with collage, like yours. I didn't draw any of the art. I'm working, and I'm an artist, but I can't draw like Shmups. I wanted to turn out a certain way, I'm actually working on a second one now that just kind of has art that it turns out the way I'm able to do it, which is, a lot different than,
a traditional.
I guess yours turned out really different than what you'd expect too. But anyways, it's 100% Google collage. There's a little sentence at the beginning of the game that says, all rights reserved by original artists via Google. Meaning, I don't really believe in intellectual property. I don't view the thing as a commodity that's protected. I view it as an art piece that doesn't need protection. You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
I'm going to get some blowback from that at some point. Like that Blazing Star on that link, the Blazing Star boss, right?
Yeah.
On the picture. He's in it. The dinosaur from Strider is in it also. Just tons of other people's art is in the game.
And
yeah,
is this, you said it's
from sprites. I'd go Google animated GIF, and I make it from Google. That's how I made the game.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Goes, and it doesn't look cohesive as, it's collaged. You look at it and you're like, this is kind of a collage. It's also kind of like a mashup or like a remix, you could view it from that perspective too.
Well, it sounds like you've got it in your own setup on an arcade cabinet.
Oh yeah, I don't think you could sue anyone for a collage. And I mean, and it's not appropriate to use this art in a video game, but I really do view it as a collage. It's like an art piece, you know? So,
yeah, I understand what you're saying. How long did it take?
600 hours. And that would have been, if the program was done, it'd be like 200 hours.
Oh, okay. So you did a lot of battling against like debug and stuff like that?
Incredibly difficult, and I was in touch with those two, the makers of the program, the creators. Like, they would help me all the time, and they would, like, you know, like, if I was up against a brick wall, they would try to fix that part of the program so I could proceed and stuff like that.
That's crazy to think about, because, I mean, when you think about using programs these days, like, let's say we're listening to this podcast and Audacity crashed and died. I call Audacity up, they're going to be like, who are you? What do you want?
Yeah, they're not going to fix the program for you.
No.
But these guys are so far out on a limb. I mean, they're selling their program, which anyone would just say, this is garbage, you know? And they're selling it, and they're available, and they're doing it, of course, so they can interact with people and get it fixed up better. Like, they recognize that they need people to use it to see what's missing from it, you know what I mean?
So was it a challenge with, like, figuring out the enemy AI and things like that, or bullet patterns? How did that work?
Well, that's the other thing, too. Since there's no programming, did I mention that? There's no programming.
Yes.
Like, 100%, you know, you gotta use their structure.
Okay.
And as far as that goes, and the structure's not finished, so it's just totally, you know, just discovering what works is just a crazy process, you know. And, their palette of possibilities, you know, is really quite wide. Like I was saying, probably 70% of it works, and I probably couldn't even use that much. It was just, I can't even, my lips won't even move because it was such a numbingly horrific process to try to get anything out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, every AI was like pre-scripted. It was actually, it's kind of like, you know, when you're using something that has, where you don't really have control over anything but the colors you have in the paint box. It's like, and in this context, it's like having a bunch of little robots and you try to set them up in predictable ways, you know? And they do their own thing. You just have to arrange them. So the arrangement, I don't know how to describe it.
The enemy formations.
On a fine scale, less composition, more arrangement of pre-composed things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I thought, you know, part of the huge challenge would be, when I did my game, would just be programming AI and things like that. But after I got them programmed, I spent just as much time figuring out how to arrange them in the map. I was like, holy crap, this is harder than I thought. Yeah. Because, you know, you put 4 or 5 too many enemies in a weird spot and all of a sudden it just doesn't feel right, or it's too easy, and then you're like, oh, let me fix that. Then it's way too hard. Yeah. I consider that to be like the artistry that goes into all these shmups. That's why Don't Unpatch It is so good, is because it's so finely arranged. Yeah, you can tell developer, especially when you consider that, you know, with the comboing, how you can combo through like almost all the stages, you know. I think all of them. They had to really meticulously set that up to make that possible. Yeah. Yeah, they didn't just conceive that. They like tried it and adjusted it, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's kind of was my process too, trying and adjusting, and but man, it sure was hard.
what really happened. So when I finished my game, when I worked on it, when I made it, I had a major enlightenment. Like, you already probably have this perspective because you do programming, but just knowing how difficult it is to make something move to the left,
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's like someone took sunglasses off of me, and every time I look at any video game, I'm shocked at how fancy it is.
How complicated all that stuff is, yeah.
Before I just thought, I took all that for granted. Now I can't see anything without just being like, I can't believe someone manually did that,
Yeah, I actually had a very similar experience to that, where the thing I struggled with for weeks is, the Dodonpachi laser?
Uh-huh.
Programming something like that is actually really challenging. Like, all the different things that happen with it, because first it's gotta shoot out of your ship, it's gotta have its own unique sprite cycle, and then when it hits something, it's gotta create a hit. And then if something, this was a big trip up for me. Let's say you're hitting a boss or like a large enemy with your laser, and something flies in the middle of your laser. In Dodonpachi, your laser will shoot back, it will fall back and hit the thing that flew in front of it. Well, for my game, for like weeks, it would just fly through the laser. I was like, oh, this is jank. And the problem is I could not figure out how to get it. I finally figured it out, but it took forever. Like, how to get the laser to go back and hit the thing that flew in front of it.
Yeah.
Or
that's the stuff. You'd never see that unless you tried to do it. You'd never see that in any game.
You just think naturally the game would figure the laser would just move itself, but... Or, like you mentioned, moving left to right. Another thing I noticed is, like, if you play later shmups, like the cave shmups and things like that, you'll notice that when you press left or right, there's a little bit of inertia where your ship doesn't just go full speed instantly. It kind of has like a real vehicle where it slowly accelerates a little bit so that you have a lot more control. But if you play something like Gradius or the older school shmups, if you just press left, it hits full speed. The second you press, it's just like... So it feels like slippery compared to that. And so I spent a ton of time figuring out how to make your ship do that little acceleration before it hit in full speed. And it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, well, I bet there was more code in that than the going right, Right. I don't know. I should speak on that stuff. When I made an arcade game. Oh, and then, so you asked about, do you want to know, about how the game works a little bit?
Yeah.
I'm a total nerd, so I can't talk very fast about it. But so here's the basic details. In the game, the gameplay is your character. One kind of thing I've been trying to experiment with is different input methods for shmups. Like giant joysticks that you hold in your hand like a flight stick and stuff like that. The cabinet that I play all my shmups at home is a sit-down cabinet with a big flight stick that you hold in your right hand, a big bomb dropper you pull in your left hand. And it's from
what's it from?
It's from a Thunderblade cabinet.
Oh, okay.
So the Thunderblade joystick and then the accelerometer on the Thunderblade is now a big bomb dropper. And that seems silly because I think that's really counterintuitive because why would you want less control when playing shmups? You know what I mean? Because that's what you get when you use these crazy things,
Sure, like the flight stick.
Yeah, but
like a hardcore person, maybe even someone like myself. You handed me that flight stick, I'd throw it out. I'd throw it over my shoulder and be like, "Okay, bring me an arcade stick, dude."
Yeah, I'd be able to use it. But the two things that kind of have been on my mind is number one, I'm good at it. You kind of just like anything. You take for granted that it took you a long time to learn how to use a joystick too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I'm actually pretty good at the flight stick, and it's not. I don't feel like it's a hindrance at all. But the other thing is, I kind of crave a little more physical involvement. Like I want to use bigger muscles as I do it, and it kind of feels a little more engaging to me. I guess my imagination is diminished a little bit as I get older, so I want to do more.
I always thought it'd be cool. I don't know why they've never made this, but like an arcade stick with rumble. So your ship gets hit and the cabinet shakes like, oh shit, you just got hit,
Well, the Thunderblade one actually has.
Yeah, Thunderblade will do that.
It's not active. It's not in mine. But in my cabinets, when I'm building my cabinets, I've experimented with like trying to do stuff like that. I have a machine gun cabinet where you shoot, I have a light gun.
Oh yeah.
I had to build a mechanism inside there that would make it vibrate like a machine gun.
Oh, that's cool. What game is it for?
It's just for MAME, but I play, I can't remember what it's called.
LA Machine Guns? That's my guess.
Oh, this is embarrassing because it's like the only one I play on there. I play Alien 3 a little bit on there.
Oh, okay.
And I play, it's called Space. It's a Taito game called Space something. And it's like an Aliens knockoff. It's really embarrassing. I can't think of the name of it. But anyways, I like the big controls. So on my game, the control is a flight stick. It's actually the joystick model that they have on Tron. It's like this kind of like tall top handle grip with a big thumb button, and a trigger. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what you hold in your right hand, and then there's a bomb dropper on the left. And
you were able to program that onto your cabinet?
Well, it just uses normal controls. I mean, that thing's decoded with it turns up into W and left into A, And then the last detail is the game is about, so I played in, my little brother had this jazz band that was kind of this modern artsy jazz band, and we would play out on the streets in different spots every Friday night at midnight during the summers for years. Like these guerrilla shows. Like we'd play under the freeway overpass, or we'd play like in this like skyscraper courtyard, when the security guard wasn't there. We'd play in these parking garages, or we'd play in the footprint of this building they tore down, and tons of people would come to these shows, just all totally underground stuff. And the game is a document of that.
That is cool.
The music of the game is the music that we would play.
Are the enemies crossing guards or mall cops and stuff like that?
It's more abstract. So here's the abstract part. So my little brother, in his like kind of branding, like when he would advertise his shows and stuff, he'd use polar bear imagery all the time. And he'd be kind of open about like, my spirit animal's the polar bear or whatever. And he would always kind of pose the polar bear like it was him, in the flyers and stuff. And he's of course like, he's off the deep end himself. I mean, he's some crazy musician who does these ridiculous shows out on the streets and kind of deals with extreme isolation and alienation all the time. That's kind of like a polar bear. I think that's why he kind of picked that animal,
Uh-huh.
But anyways, in the game, you play as him in a polar bear suit through like the locations that we used to play in.
That's awesome.
I'm typing this in right now. Let's see.
So, my question is the sequel going to feature your spirit animal?
Yes, the sequel is going to be about my band. This is about my brother's band, and then I have this band I've been doing for like 20 years. And it's going to be about that, and it's going to have a spaceship. My spirit animal is a spaceship, of course.
Are you a little impressed that I guessed that?
Yeah, and I'm just getting started on it. I'm just trying to it'll be a real hurdle for me to make my second copy of this. And then I'll start just moving on the next one. But that's kind of my new art form, is making arcade cabinets as if they were a real thing. And I always use old cabinets and redo them. When I was going to make some copies of this, I was like, I racked my brain for how can I make a cool cabinet? What cool design could I come up with that would make the cabinet special, since I'm starting from scratch.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Make how there's the part of the cabinet that the screen fits in? Like you put the screen inside? Make that the open mouth of a bear. So it's like...
Well, I almost did that. The cabinet I'm working on now has two big things on the side, and they're polar bear arms on the side of the cabinet.
Oh, that's sick.
It does look a little bit like a giant polar bear. And I was going to do a face, but I think I actually kind of had to use some speaker room at the top, so I'm not doing a face. But I thought of doing that. And I do have a favorite cabinet. It'll come right up if I just Google it one time. It's called the, It's not the Universal cabinet. It's a Sega cabinet. Maybe it is no, it's taller than that one. It's a Sega cabinet that's like a tall, kind of Western-sized cabinet, but it has, it kind of has two angled bars on the sides, and then the computer is in a separate section down at the bottom, and the monitor's in a separate section at the top. It's called the Universal Upright Cabinet. So anyways, I was going to try to make a cool cabinet, and then I thought, at the last second, I was like, it just popped into my head. The problem with arcades is that they're consumer products. They're consumables. Like, the arcade buys them, makes their money, throws them in the garbage. That's the reason why the artistry isn't up front in arcades in the first place, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm using only old cabinets, repurposed, you know? And my attitude is if someone walks into the arcade and sees one of these games, the normal person will say, what is that piece of garbage over there, you know? And the enlightened person will say, ooh, that's the reason I like arcades in the first place, is because of stuff like that.
Okay, I'm going to put a scenario to you. So you make your cabinet, you stick it out in, let's say, a mall. A mom comes by, she's got her 2 kids, she sees that cabinet, she's horrified. She's like, what is this? Get away from that, kids. You know, you're going to get hurt. And then you get someone who maybe grew up in the arcades, misses the arcades, he goes to the mall and just dreams about seeing the arcades again, and he walks in and sees your cabinet. It's just going to be like, holy shit.
Yeah, and they say, that reminds me of another cabinet.
Right.
It's made out of another cabinet. The polar bear. So there's a cabinet called Star Wars Pod Racer, and it happens to have these 2 big these 2 big wooden kind of slats on the sides, and those are my polar bear arms now.
That's awesome. So how were you finding all these old arcade cabinets? You mentioned you'd find them, look up in the garbage, right? What year? Was this kind of steadily over the years? Like, was there always arcade park garbage to find, or was it?
I think there always was. I mean, I think that if you can find an arcade distributor, you know, which, I mean, there still aren't any.
Right.
I have to go do it again every week as an errand to go do it, because I don't know if you read at the bottom of that page about the game, but I'm working on a couple other games, so I got to go pick up some more cabinets. Just currently, and I'm going to go across down to the distributor and see if they have this. But they always, in my experience, they've always had cabinets from the previous decade sitting around. You know, like they don't dare to throw them away, but they're just garbage. You know, so they put them in a shed out back or something.
Yeah.
The last cabinets I got were going in the dumpster, and I rescued it. Like, you know, I said I'll buy those, and I bought them for $50, and he was lifting them into the dumpster at that moment. You know, so they really are garbage. Yeah, I have a racing. One of my cabinets at my house is like a race car. You know, like a sit-down cabinet with a steering wheel. The control panel has like a nice steering wheel with the buttons on the side and a nice four gear shifter on the right. You know, and that's something I got out of the garbage last time I was over there, which was like half a year ago. And after the guy left, I climbed up in the dumpster. It was like a 2-story tall dumpster, you know, the tall kind. Mm-hmm. And I grabbed that control panel thinking, like, maybe I'll use this, you know, and I threw it in my car. And the dumpster had like 10 of those in it. 10 of those control panels that are like, you know, kind of these priceless, irreplaceable things.
And they're
like, I wish I would have grabbed a couple, because I'd make another race car game right now. But yeah, they're consumable. They're consumables.
Right.
They go in the package when they're done. But not mine. Mine's an art piece. It's going to last forever.
That's awesome. You have that local arcade, too, that you can place them in.
Yeah, I'm really lucky to live near that, you know, near somebody who kind of has his finger on that pulse, you know?
Because I live in
a miracle.
My nearest arcade is in Boise. And every time I go, it's still going, but every time I go, it's like watching ice sculpture melt. You know, it's like, oh, what cabinet's gone today? It's like, oh no, this cabinet's gone. And then I go back a month later, what cabinet's gone? You know, they're just slowly melting away until there's nothing left.
The monitors are breaking.
Yeah.
A monitor will be out, and that's it for that cabinet. Which one do you go to? I know those arcades up there, because we go
Pojo's.
Which one?
Pojo's.
I don't know that one. But we, as musicians, we travel through Boise every once in a while, and we play at the Shredder, and we play at the Underground.
So when it comes to, when you're building your own cabinets and stuff, it sounds like you're choosing, like you said, you're using Tron joysticks and that bomb dropper, which looked awesome, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
When I looked at the cabinet in the video, I was like,
that was one of the gear shifters I got out of that dumpster.
I think it's really cool how you're putting a kind of an artistic touch on something that, even myself, I'll admit, I'm just trying to boil it down to a science, trying to replicate the original, and you're kind of putting more personality into it, thinking outside the box. I think that's really cool and something that more people such as myself should consider doing.
Well, the reason I think where that comes from in me is because I've grown up. The emotion I've felt as I've engaged all this stuff and identified with all this stuff is just absolute alienation. Like I'm the only, I don't have any friends to do this with or anything. So I think it's really natural to kind of want to make it as personal as possible because I've been alone the whole time.
Right. And you don't have a scene of people coming over and being like, dude, you need to use this part. You need to use this. No, exactly. Don't change that. Oh no, you're ruining you're ruining this or that.
I don't even have a mall to go to see what the real one's like,
Yeah.
Because they're extinct. So it's kind of like getting reinvented.
So, what do you identify as the period that you enjoyed the most going to the arcade, or the arcade games you enjoyed the most?
Since I made that game, and since I've kind of been enlightened to like the beauty of all games, I'm just like a little baby when I look at them, and I like the stupidest, some dumb race car game that I would think was so dumb. I think is very charming or radical or cool now. Like
Cruising USA or something.
Oh, yeah. So I'm like kind of next level on that stuff all of a sudden. But if I could just go back 1 year before I started working on that, then the answer would just be very clearly like 1989 to 1992 or something.
Right. Kind of.
Everything then was so narrative and so fresh and so like that's when they made Ghosts and Goblins and Rider and Raiden 2 and I don't know. I can't think of the very best games from it. That's when they made that's when they made Aliens, the arcade game.
Yeah.
That game. Really magical. And the graphics were just getting like kind of really beautiful in their own right. Like just a couple years before, the graphics were like kind of abstract and clunky. A couple years later, the graphics didn't really matter because it was just a street with a race car. You know what I mean? And then I just kind of missed the fighting games and stuff. I never really played like Street Fighter 2 and stuff like that very much. But all that stuff is from that era, and all the heritage of like all the fighting games before the polygons, kind of harken to that age. They don't really make them more beautiful than that. They just make them like, arcade 1993 level arcade beauty is like that kind of aesthetic was carried all the way into like the latest fighting games, besides the polygons.
Yeah, very true.
Like did you ever play the King of Fighters series? Like those are like very modern. They still make those and they all kind of look, not much finer than Street Fighter 2, just a little bit more polished, but not really different. Still
using that sprite art.
Yeah.
They did until very recently, and then they went downhill with this horrible 3D animation. And I'm not just saying that because I dislike 3D. I mean, it's actually horrible. It looks like it belongs on the PS2.
Uh-huh.
But
did they make it look just like the sprite but 3D instead?
I wish. No, it just looks bad. It looks really cheap. It was made by some Chinese company that bought out SNK. But before that, King of Fighters 14 had gorgeous hand-drawn sprites. It's insane how beautiful that game was.
Yeah, well, I consider that to be an echo of 1991.
Absolutely.
That's the era that I'm in love with.
And a lot of those games, as far as finding cabinets, at least for me, it's hard to find those cabinets. Like, the only cabinets I ever run across now are kind of the cabinets I grew up with. So they'd be more like, X-Men, that beat 'em up X-Men Apocalypse, I think it is?
Yeah,
Yeah, and like stuff from that area, which I really enjoyed.
That's from the same era, but it's not the best stuff. Like, I recognize a void too. Like, for some reason, any game that they, like, I don't know the numbers, but if they made like 500 of a cabinet, like I'm just looking on the computer screen, there's Altered Beast. That's like the most beautiful game. They probably made 500 of those, and they probably made 2,000 X-Men Apocalypses. You know what I mean? So it remains, but all the Altered Beasts are gone. Yeah, so there's a void, and also, I don't know, I actually can't put my finger on why this, except for maybe the people that are like starting barcades and stuff are older than me or something like that. Because it's really common to see a lot of classic games being honored.
Yes.
But the 1990 games are just history,
Yeah, they've kind of fallen in that dark hole of where the arcade cabinets go.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, there's some arcade cabinets too that I grew up with, and they broke down and got thrown away, and now I haven't seen them in years. I'm trying to think of one that I really enjoyed that was like that.
Ooh, I have a fave. You know the one Forgotten Worlds?
Uh-huh.
That one is like one of those kind of holy grail cabinets, and I went to my brother since that game, since we were in that band, he moved to Los Angeles. I go visit him sometimes. There's a barcade around the corner from his house, and they had this Forgotten Worlds cabinet there, and it was so good. It was like walking into the Louvre or something like that and seeing this masterpiece cabinet there.
Is it pretty hard to find, or is it just one that you really enjoy?
I've never seen it. I don't think there's another one. I mean, I don't know where you'd go to find another one.
Right.
It's like they're that rare. I mean, if you visited every arcade in the country, some of these games you might find one copy of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I believe.
Well, you're probably right.
Or none. I mean, I don't believe there'd be none, but I'd hate to think that. But maybe there's none in a barcade, but there's one left in someone's house.
Yeah, some collector. A collector's got a hold of it. So my final question is, as we've learned more about you, you have a lot of experience as an artist. I would like to ask you about kind of your viewpoints on what kind of intrigues you about Shmups artistically. Like, what is it about them specifically that catches your interest?
Well, the gameplay is so visceral. Like, it's primal. It's just like, I've always viewed Shmups as being kind of, an image of the animal journey, where you just have to survive and then die at the end. And they're, with no other real details, like that's the plot of every Shmup, basically. Anyways, that's this very visceral thing. It really engages you at a, caveman level. And, I think the art has kind of reflected that. I think in general, Shmups kind of have cool art. It's the game. I don't know. It's tied into the gameplay. It's just spaceships are so cool. You know what? It has nothing to do with the spaceships. It's the lasers and the explosions. They are more exciting than any fighter pose.
I definitely know what you're coming from. Like, if you play kind of a bad shmup, I'll say, one of the things I always dislike about bad shmups, when you blow up an enemy, it's just like a little pop or a little puff of smoke.
Yeah.
And like the good ones, there's just flames and the screen shatters, and you know what I mean? It's very satisfying to get the hits and the kills.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. And that's why I'm having a hard time defining it, because you don't even perceive an explosion as being an object,
Yeah.
It's just a visceral flash.
And I have to say, watching your shmup, that thing's got some seriously satisfying lasers and stuff going on in it. That was awesome.
Which one?
The shmup you made with the.
Oh yes, yeah.
The polar bears lasers and stuff are sick.
So basically, the gameplay on mine, it's pretty good. I don't know. I tried to balance it. It's pretty fun to play, I think. But if any serious shmup player played it, that's the first thing they'd say is like, this explosion covered up the screen and I died. You know what I mean? But I mean, I was actually, this is another interesting thing about the shmup. I was trying to simulate what it was like to play in that band. which was very scary and very difficult. And that it was a sight reading band. The music was really hard to read. I barely knew how to play the saxophone. Plus, we were outside, exposed, and cops were going to come get us all the time, you know. So I was trying to replicate that feeling in the shmup very, very much.
Like a feeling of...
The explosions are big, though, yes.
Like a feeling of improvisation, maybe?
Yeah, a feeling of loss of control and trying to interpret what's happening all the time, you know. Compared to any, you know, high-quality shmup where control is at the top of the list, and then they try to overwhelm you while not taking away your control, you know?
Yeah.
Mine's a little different. The control's fine, and the pacing's pretty good, and the difficulties, it's not even that, you know, hard, but loss of control is actually a big part of it.
Yeah, I'm excited to give it a try.
I'm going to get some bad reviews for that.
Well, they can come on the show and voice their bad reviews.
Yeah.
Well, I think the one thing to remember, too, is, you know, with the internet, people are prone to judge on the internet. We all know that.
Yes.
And so you put something out on the internet, such as this podcast, and I'm sure people are going to have plenty of criticisms. You know, oh, Mark, your audio quality sucks. You're not all there. But then it's like, there's a whole nother step, though. It's like, okay, you make a podcast, you come on the episode, and let's see how quick you are to judge. And I think with game development, that's a whole nother level. I mean, you're a person who doesn't have a whole lot of experience with game development, and yet
that's my first one.
But you're passionate enough to keep going with it, even though, you know, you're not having any kind of monetary gain or trying to make a business. It's just pure passion. And so it almost feels kind of tacky to really sit down and be like, well, this sucks. You know?
Well,
this isn't Dodonpachi, or this isn't
I hope that it's far out. I hope that it's far out enough that anybody who engages it, you know, recognizes it as being left of center, you know. But I hope it's not too far out that people don't engage it.
Yeah.
Also, you know.
Well, I was just watching gameplay, and I had a huge smile on my face. I thought it was awesome.
Rad. Nobody has engaged it. Not a single person. Because I live, you know, because there's no one plays shmups here.
Yeah.
Many people have played it, but I've played it, you know, 1 million times. I finished it a couple months ago, and I've been touring it really aggressively, like in public, you know. And I don't think anyone has played it 10 times, you know, for example.
Now, when you say you were touring it, were you bringing the cabinet around with you?
Yeah, I take the cabinet all around. Like I was in another crisis. I've been in another crisis because I have to go play shows all the time. That's my other art, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of live in a cultural wasteland here. It's really hard to find a place to perform. All the rock and roll bars are long gone, and
rock and roll is having a tough time.
Yeah, totally. And so I'm kind of antiquated in that regard, you know? So I use the game as an excuse to do shows. Like I say, I'm going to have a game release. I've had like 7 video game release shows over the last couple months. And it's an excuse to go play a show somewhere.
I wouldn't have any complaints. They go to a rock show and they bust out a unique shmup cabinet. I'd be happy.
It kind of spices it up. It kind of, you know, smooths it over. 2 extinct art forms in one building.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens. Right now it's over at the record store where we played last week, and it's going to be there for a week, and then I'm going to take it back to the arcade. I've been trying to do a show in the arcade. That's my real fantasy.
That would be sick.
I can't win him over because, you know, he's in the mall and there's mall cops and stuff.
Oh my gosh, the regulations.
Yeah.
The regulations.
But that's like a secondary function of the cab now that it's done.
Well, that's awesome.
I kind of got that out of my system.
Well,
I got that out of my system because I also kind of found some more places to play, so I'm just back into, you know, using it for its real purpose. I just leave it at the arcade in between that.
Well, you know what's going to happen is next time I come to Salt Lake, I'm hunting that cabinet down and getting the high score.
Well,
I'll come with like a box full of quarters and get the high score, dude.
There's no continues, you know. The program doesn't support continues.
You just gotta go back to square one.
Yeah, there's a 1 credit, whatever.
Oh my gosh! Oh my god! Would you say?
I can do it. I can make it to the end.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Well, I've played it
1 million times.
I'm gonna definitely give it a try. Are there any secret developer tricks? Maybe you shouldn't reveal them, but are there secret developer tricks like Konami Code type things to get through it?
No, there's not that, but there is a counterintuitive trick. The game, it has spots where you are supposed to relinquish control by dropping a bomb. You're supposed to do that. And it's really nobody ever does it. You never feel like it's the right thing, but if you played saxophone in this band, you'd know when to do it. It'd be intuitive. But as a video game player, like, it's hard to drop your bomb to protect yourself.
Uh-huh.
And you have to do it in my game.
Is it when the cops start showing up? Is that the bomb drop time?
There's certain points, and the thing is, they're predictable. Like, you can see it coming, and you're just like, I think I can make it. But you're supposed to see it coming and go,
it's time to bomb.
Can't do it now. And you drop a bomb. And the bomb lasts for, like 10 seconds. It's this enormous bomb. And you feel so much regret when you drop the bomb because it interrupts the action. And it said, right when the bomb is done, it says, you get points for shooting the bad guys. And when you drop the bomb, you lose the opportunity to shoot all those bad guys.
Right.
You drop the bomb and then a voice says, check your points! To
That's funny. Is it your voice?
To degrade you for dropping it. But you have to do it. That's the secret of the game. It's kind of a sad game.
That's awesome. Well, that's all I can think of. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, I got everything off my chest, I think, except that thanks for doing the podcast, and this is really fun. And also, if you do want to go on a pilgrimage to see that game, make sure you text me so I can tell you where it is, because it's, from a collector's standpoint, it's the rarest shmup in the world.
That's right. Hear that, everyone? Get to Salt Lake and play the rarest shmup ever.
Yeah, and you have to watch the video to make sure you know it's a real shmup, because I wouldn't go play someone's crappy game either. But it's a cool game.
And if you get the high score in it, what happens? Do you get a...
If you get the high score, you just get... There's this score chart says, worship the best players, or something like that.
Oh, that's funny.
Worship the expert players. So you get your name on there. There's another really funny thing about this. The program doesn't support... There's not a, module that lets you input letters. So you get the high score, you're on the chart, you don't have access to your laptop, you just have these controls.
Yeah.
You have to input your score with the controls, which is always some unpredictable batch of letters. So you end up with an anonymous score.
Oh,
which is
man.
Which is also what it was like to be in the band. That's what it's like to be in like a 9-piece jazz band. Is you're anonymous.
You're anonymous. You don't get to go to school the next day and get the ladies or anything.
Yeah, you're not the star. You're an invisible member of the band. So even with your high score, you don't get to, you get to put in random initials.
You'd want to come back on again.
Sure. I don't have to talk about my game only.
Well, it's definitely a worthy subject to talk about.
I'm working on some other games. I'm making a game. I'm going to make more cabinets. I have other games in the works. I have other plans that are already kind of developing a little bit.
Are they all shmups?
I'm going to be a big arcade player in one-off cabinets.
Are they all shmups?
Well, the next one's going to be a vertical shmup, and it's going to be more traditional, and I'm going to focus on control rather than loss of control.
Uh-huh.
Try to make a really tight, normal shmup. And one is I guess it's technically a dodge 'em up. You play a fleet of about 50 spaceships flying from Earth to Mars through an asteroid field and through obstacles. And each spaceship is just 1 pixel big, like there's little tiny dots. And you have to survive. You have to get there. So you can't lose all your ships, but they're just getting pelted by asteroids the whole time.
How many can you have die or none? Do they all have to survive?
If one of them lands, then you win.
Oh, okay.
I think you get a low score though. And,
are you controlling all of them at once, or is it one at a time?
Yeah, you control them all at once, and one button kind of tightens the formation, one kind of spreads them into this shape, and one spreads them into that shape.
Oh, that's cool.
And at the bottom part of the screen is dialogue between all the ships. So there's incredibly fast dialogue from like the science officers and the captains and stuff like that, talking about how they're getting blown up. And the other detail is it has a soundtrack of procedurally generated synthesizer jams.
Oh, really?
It's like this kind of like strong, droney synth techno stuff. And I didn't make this game. My friend made this game, and she programmed it. She's a programmer. So I'm just I'm her publisher. I'm going to make the cabinet and put it in the arcade.
Now you got your own business there now.
Yeah, well, it's Rest 30 Records video game division.
Well, so definitely,
that's what I'm doing next.
When you get this stuff done, definitely let me know. Okay, awesome. Well, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for doing this.
I hope you memorized everything you said in case we need to I'm just kidding.
Oh, man. I had to say it to myself all day long.